Any clarifications on the assessment? Any other feedback that you require? Okay, no. So next week we will look at the second part of your assessment. We'll take a look at the requirements for that. And today we will wind up the operations part of the assessment. So we'll look at the digital processes that are required for organizations operating today and the operations strategy. So these two are important for you to do your first part A of the assessment. You need to be able to look at the digital process map of an organization also, because that will actually give you some additional marks if you can do that. So let's actually take a look at the requirements and also the operations strategy, which is very important. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. What I have done is I have uploaded the summary of what I'm going to do. The same presentation, I have uploaded it to the next Moodle site. So you can download this. There are a lot of details, right, in the presentations that have been uploaded. So what I've done is I've actually taken the salient points from these and then prepared a summary worksheet, summary presentation format for today. Okay, so let's look at digital process map and operations strategy. So when you talk about digital processes, that's a norm today. Digitalization is the name of the game. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations have not taken the impact of digitization very seriously. To make use of digitization, there's so much of changes that needs to happen in organizations. And that's something organizations should take very, very seriously and build it into their strategy, in their business strategy. So that even the operations are digitized. Operations are digitized because if not, organizations will struggle to survive in the future. So, welcome to the future. So what is this future we are talking about? To talk, before we talk about the future, let's look a little bit on the past. You know what happened to Kodak?
JJ, your line is getting disrupted. You're not getting clear. We are not
hearing. You know what happened to Kodak? Yeah.
Your line is getting disrupted.
Can you hear me?
Right now, okay.
You're not clear?
Now it's okay.
The problem is the problem with. All right,
connection.
Okay, fine.
I think it must be the connection.
Yeah, it must be the connection because unfortunately, all sort of these internet providers the same problem today. Because majority of people at home, most of them are online today. I'm actually running videos, that's what they say, and steady bandwidth for most of the users. Kodak was the organization that invented digital photography. But they fell down the wayside as they went, because the organization did not actually see how they can adapt this new technology, and then they didn't see this digital photography replacing the normal, photography that they were used to in the future. So that they lost business and they had to wind up. Okay. Now, look at the fourth industrial revolution today. We are on the threshold of the fourth industrial revolution. We're just actually starting to see the impact, the effects of the fourth industrial revolution, which is basically called the Internet of Things. We talk about intelligence, the impact on health. You know what 3D printing is? In Germany, they use this technology to, printing is not relegated to an office room anymore. Now, there are software applications that can actually allow you to design your own, probably, for example, a pair of shoes, and then get it printed. In other words, get it manufactured. So you design it and you print it, and you have your shoes. So that's where the technology is heading today. Then we have heard about these autonomous cars, electric cars, the impact of technology on education. You can see the impact even now. We have been locked down, but we are still continuing with online, learning processes. Agriculture, right? So software is going to disrupt everything. Now, when you look at your assessment, take a look at whether the organization that you have selected has a digital process map. In other words, what are the software, hardware, and technology that this organization is using at the moment? Or are they, not using hardware and technology? Does the organization have a strategy on using technology, and how this usage would impact on the way this organization would operate? So, Uber, everyone knows about that. Airbnb, artificial intelligence. Most importantly, how these would impact on organizations. So that's very important for organizations to understand. So that is why organizations have now created a specific designation called Chief Digital Officer, CDO. And CDO, the Chief Digital Officer, sits right in the board. So digitization has become part of an organization strategy. And the responsibility of the CDO, the Chief Digital Officer, is to find out how the organization can capitalize on technology and how they can actually use technology as a competitive advantage. Okay. Facebook, social media, self-driven cars. Now they say, going forward, more and more people might be reluctant to go in for a driver's license and all, right? Autonomous cars will replace that. You don't need a driving license because you don't need to own a car. All you need is an app and to pay for the journey. So these are very revolutionary ways of revolutionary, um, you know, concepts that will see the light of day in the future. But most importantly, the question that should be asked is how these developments would impact on organizations' operations, the way that they work, right? Okay, so traditional car companies now normally try evolutionary approach, like for example, just building a better car. So the operation strategy is to find out what sort of additional functionality should a traditional car has. But tech companies like Tesla, Apple, Google, and so forth and all, look at it from a revolutionary perspective. That is, you build a computer on wheels, not so much add functionality to the existing vehicle models and so forth. So when one of the impact of self-driven cars, or sorry, autonomous cars, would be that insurance companies would have had to close down because there won't be any accidents, and the insurance will be that much cheaper. So the concept of car insurance business model, can really disappear. So that's very important. So in your own organization, the organization that you have basically selected for the assessment, just look at it from the technology aspect as well, and then prepare one slide. When you do your analysis of the internal processes, identifying the gaps in the processes, when you draw your activity flow diagram, just think about whether technology may have an impact on some of the things that is being done. And especially that will only be reflected when the operations are moved to the selected country. So when you do your country analysis doing pestle and probably SWOT or any other tool that you think is applicable, you'll take a look at the technology aspect as well. Whether what you're trying to do in the selected country would be impacted because of the technological revolution as well. Okay. Right. So electricity will become cheaper, health. There have been instances where, doctors have performed surgery remotely. There was this case where a doctor in US, performed a minor heart surgery on a patient in France, remotely using technology. So these are very radical sort of, technological advancements, but, these can impact on how organizations will conduct themselves, or organizations will operate. And the impact will be more on the operations rather than on the other areas, like, coming up with business strategies and all. Vision and mission will be the same, but the way that organizations try to achieve the vision, the way that the organizations strive to achieve the vision would change because of the impact or influence of technology. Okay. Right. So software is going to disrupt industries. It's going to disrupt traditional industries. So it's better, take a look at your own organization that you have basically selected for this assessment, and pose the question: how will software disrupt these selected operations? How will it? and probably include a slide to basically tell the audience how you think that technology might impact the way that the organization will operate in the new on the selected country. Okay. So these other slides gives you a little bit more details on what we have just discussed, like health, then education. Now all these things are okay. So what should organizations do to prepare themselves to face to this technological revolution? Now that is something that organizations can do now without waiting for technology to impact on the way organizations perform. One way is lean synchronization. Now you know what lean is. What is lean? Is there anyone who can actually tell me or tell the group what do you mean by lean? We talk about this concept a lot. Lean, be lean and all. What do you actually mean by lean? Hello? Hello?
Yes, Tejas.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
What do you mean by lean? Can anyone tell me what is lean? What is meant by lean?
Where the demand meets the supply.
Lean, yes. See, the issue is this. There are two things that you should actually look at. When customers want something or they demand something, customers expect that demand to be supplied instantaneously. You know, that's the changing. That's the way that things are changing in the business world today. Customers want things supplied immediately. Now, for organizations to do that, they have to look at their internal processes. And lean synchronization is actually a philosophy, right? Which looks at three things. One is elimination of waste in all forms. Anything. So how do you define waste? What is meant by waste? What is meant by waste? Can you hear me now? Is there any problem with the?
We can hear you, sir.
We can hear you.
All right. Okay. Fine. So lean, yes, you're right, Isuru. It does not anything that does not add value to the company is considered waste. So generally, organizations can classify these so-called things that do not add value to the company into 7 things. So there are actually 7 classification of waste. So what are these 7 things? There are 7 kinds of prominent waste. So you can see that on the screen. Waste from overproduction. You manufacture things over and above the requirement. Waiting time. Customer comes and actually tells that he wants something, the time taken for the customers to wait, the idle time the customer has to spend. Transportation waste, right? What is transportation waste? Transportation waste is without sending the goods from one location to the other in one particular transport. You have to actually have multiple transports. But of course, in the real supply world, you may have to actually have it, but need to minimize that. You need to ask questions, right? The time taken for the transport to go from point A to point B. Especially in organizations that manage distribution, transportation waste is one of the key things that they have to consider. It's up to them to send goods to the customer in the shortest possible time. Then you have this inventory waste. We did something on inventory last time, right? We keep on building stock, building inventory, and the inventory does not move. And that's inventory waste. So the question that should be asked is, why should we have to build inventory? Why? So organizations tend to move from a make to stock position to a make to order position. Okay. So a lot of organizations are trying their best to, do away with putting or manufacturing finished goods and putting them into inventory. Then you get processing waste. How much of work in progress waste do manufacturing plants have? So much of waste. Waste of water. That's why organizations have now these reverse osmosis plants and plants that can purify water so that they can reuse water. Waste of motion. This is true for warehouses, waste of motion. Where fast moving items are stored in a far off position, where people have to, walk a lot to retrieve these. Ideally, items that are moving fast have to be stored at a place where it's convenient to access them quickly. So warehouse management comes into fore here. And of course, you get the waste from product defects, which we have already covered when you're talking about quality. So lean synchronization is all about eliminating waste, involving everyone. You can't eliminate waste if you don't involve everyone. And you can't make your organization lean if you don't identify the non-value added activities. When you do your activity flow diagram, this is what is important. Identify the non-value added activities when you do your activity flow diagram. Identify the activities that you think does not add value, but you need to justify that. You need to tell why before you take them out and refine the activity flow diagram for the new location, for the new country. And then we are talking about people here. So because you're talking about people, we need to focus on continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is basically the name of the game. The methods of eliminating waste now. How do you eliminate waste? How do you eliminate waste? Streamline flow. Match demand exactly, which is easier said than done. But with this, people like organizations like McDonald's have found a way out. Increase process flexibility. So you have capacity, you try and use the capacity on multiple demand processes. So this is where, when you talk about people, multi-skilling comes into fore. Multi-skilling, because a person should be able to do multiple tasks, multiple activities, so that if there is no demand for one type of activity, he can involve himself in other types of activities. Right now, we will break for 2 minutes to allow the host to break for 2 minutes. Means you don't actually go out, you just wait there, because I'm going to break for 2 minutes because there's some recording that is going on, and then they have to compartmentalize this recording into manageable units. Otherwise, the file would be too large to be circulated. Okay, so just 2 minutes, 2 minutes of your time.
Sure, Jay.
Right, okay. So let's move on now, right? We move on to the development of enterprise resource planning, right? A lot of organizations are using ERP systems. So this is a slide which basically shows you how ERP systems, evolved. They started with something called materials requirement planning in manufacturing, because the cost of manufacturing is actually in its raw materials. Generally, the major percentage of cost is in the raw materials. You can ask any organization. So managing the raw materials managing the raw materials has been one of the most important concerns of organizations. So therefore, they started with this software, MRP, then it moved into manufacturing resource planning. It's not only material, then you talked about things like machine utilizations, labor force. ERP is enterprise resource planning, where you look at information flows across the organization so that everyone in your organization is able to talk the same language right across. And when the same information is accessed right across, so even MDs or CEOs would be looking at the same information that the operational guys looks at. So there is no ambiguity when it comes to interpreting the information. So today, organizations are looking at web integrated enterprise resource planning, which is, in other words, it's more digitization concepts. Where digitization has actually taken over most activities in organizations. Even demand planning is now done using artificial intelligence models. So demand planning is done using something called predictive analytics. We use an artificial intelligence, model to look at data, look at historical data, futuristic data, the environmental data, and then come up with possibilities and probabilities. Okay. So ERP is supposed to integrate information from all parts of the organization. So here in this slide, you can look at finance, strategic reporting, sales and marketing, service, logistics, human resource management, purchasing and supply, operations, and even external suppliers and customers as well. All of them are integrated into one information system. Now, this is why ERP systems are very powerful. But unfortunately, organizations tend to overlook the advantages of running a fully integrated ERP system right across the organization due to various reasons. Therefore, what organizations tend to do is they look at one particular function like finance, and they invest a lot of money on an ERP system, and then they focus only on collating information related to finance. It doesn't make sense, because enterprise resource planning system are transactional processing systems. They are capable of capturing transactions at the detail level. So organizations should be able to use ERP systems to integrate the way that they work, integrate all their information flows. Now that would force them to do a lot of organizational structural changes. Now this is why organizations tend to be a little bit backward when it comes to making decisions relating to structural changes. They don't want to tread on each other's feet, and they don't want to sort of make people unhappy. They don't want to break comfort zones created by individuals who have done a lot for this organization. So ERP systems implementation is something that organizations tend not to give too much of attention. But going forward in the future, they will have to, if they need to integrate all parts of the organization so that they have access to timely information, the same information, unambiguous information. Okay. Right. Now we comes to operations strategy. Okay. So the role of the operations function is taking all of these into consideration, the digitization aspects, to implement the organization's business strategy. The business strategy is the vision and the mission of your organization. And from there onwards, you operationalize that strategy by supporting or by creating activities and the processes in operations that will help the organization achieve the business strategy. And then the operations functions have to drive these operations strategy. So all these ERP system implementation, management, decisions relating to technology, the use of technology, structural changes that are required for organizations, all these things comes under the umbrella of operations. Okay. So Hayes and Wheelwright came up with this model for setting up your operation so that it can actually deliver your business strategy. They came up with 4 stages. So let's look at an organization like yours. Now, this area is very important when you talk about the operation strategy of the specified organization. When you talk about the operation strategy of your organization, you should talk about this. How does your organization manage your strategy? Your organization does not have an operation strategy. How do you bring this operations concept and weave into the business strategy? How is you look internally and correct the worst problems? Now, when you do your activity flow diagram, this is what you should be doing. You identify the gaps in the process, identify the non-value added activities in the process, and then correct the worst problems. You correct the worst problems. Now, when you say correct the worst problems, most of the worst, so-called worst problems are minute. It is again, the 80-20 rule. 80% of the problem, 20% of the problems that contributes towards the 80% of the problem. So minute things like processes, layouts, the way people work, whether the right people are in the right place, the human resources angle, equipment angle, are you using technology correctly? Have you, if you have a computer system installed, are you getting the most out of the computer system? So these are very, very minute things that can be, eradicated almost very, instantaneously. So stage 1 is to correct the worst problems. You look internally and you correct the worst problems. Then what is stage 2? Stage 2, you adopt the best practice. Now you need to know what the best practice is. So you need some experts telling them what the best business practices are that would suit your own organization. So that is where you implement your strategy. So this is the first step in implementing your strategy, by adopting best practices, best business practices that have been documented by experts. Then what you do is you look at your business strategy to find out whether the business strategy is linked to these best practices, or whether the achievement of your business strategy can be done using these best practices. And if not, you may have to adjust some of these things so that it can deliver, or it can help deliver your business strategy. And the fourth stage, when you come to the fourth stage, you are a fully fledged organizations, making the best out of the resources that you have, reflecting the best business practices that has been documented by business gurus. So you have become a role model to the external environment at this point of time. And now, because you are a role model, you drive the strategy of the industry now. Now, I can give you a nice example of this. MAS, MAS, when they started operations way back in the early 1990s, they were another, another garment, manufacturing unit. That's how they started. Now, as they progressed, they really went deep into, the relevant stages and found out, first, where the weaknesses lay. Second, what best business practices are there out there which they could take and apply. And then third, they created their own business strategy that was actually linked to the way that they work. They have this separate, work ethic. Those who are working for MAS would know this. And after that, they became an icon in the garment industry, where the rest of the people, rest of the businesses operating in the garment industry use MAS as a role model. So this is an example that you can use, right, to understand how the best way of making your operations drive your business strategy. So it becomes a continuous thing. Once you achieve stage 4, then you have to go back again to stage 1, because by then, the external environment may have wielded a lot of influence in the way that you work, because changes happen a lot in the external environment. So they may be influencing the way that you operate in an adverse way. Now, this is where technology comes into fore. When you are in stage 4, when the rest of the businesses have taken your organization as a role model, you see a technological revolution happening outside. Now you need to use that to still be ahead of the race. So therefore, you need to embrace those and then go back to stage 1 and to find out, what sort of worst problems should we rectify in order to get the best out of what is happening outside, what is happening in the external environment. So when you do your assessment, it's very important that you try and relate where this organization is in terms of making operations contribute to the organization's business strategy. Are they still in stage 1 where they're still correcting the worst problems? Have they adopted the best practices? Have they linked strategy now with operations after adopting best practices? Or are they influencing the rest of the industry by the way that they are working, by the way that they operate? Are you clear? Any questions on this? Any questions on this? Because this is very important for your assessment. Any clarifications? Anything that you don't understand?
JJ, do you require slides like this one for our presentation as well? Or
Sorry, come again.
do you require a slide as this one for our presentation?
No, well, you can actually make reference to this. But if you want to put this one in, you're welcome to put. No, there's no problem. But what is important is, to
Would you explain it?
identify how the organization is managing its operational strategy. That is very important. Where is your organization, especially in this? Are they still correcting the worst problems? Or have they been able to link the operational strategy to the business strategy? Are they driving the are the operations driving the business strategy? Or are they right at the top? They are an organization that everyone is actually using as a role model. Are they driving the strategy in such a way that the rest of the organizations, rest of their competition, right, is eyeing your organization as a role model and try to sort of, learn from you. Now, example is MAS. Now we have got, a lot of people like Hydra Money, then Smart Shirts, so many other people who actually learned from MAS, who used MAS as a role model. But they may not actually come up openly and then say, look, we use MAS as our role model. But then those who know, it knows because, they use MAS. They use the way that MAS manages their, manufacturing plants, the processes that they use, the way that they sort of, manage their processes, manage their operations in their own, manufacturing plants. So for that, you need to know a little bit on the strategic side of the organization that you have selected. Where are they? Where do you think they should be, or where are they at the moment? What is their business strategy? What is their vision? What is their mission? And in terms of the vision and your mission, where are they? Have they been able to achieve their vision? Yes. No. Halfway. So this is very important when you do your analysis of the current organization. Any question? The best person, you should basically start asking this question from some of these, CEOs and all. If you have easy access to your CEO, go and one day, have a meeting with this guy and then ask, you have your business strategy. Are you satisfied with the way the operations are driving your business strategy? If not, why not? If you can ask that question from your CEO will basically give you an answer. He may not say yes, he may not say no, but then he may say, look, yes and no, there are certain things that needs to be, taken into consideration, blah, 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 there are certain constraints and, so those are the things that you need to pick up. Are you with me?
Yes.
Yes, JJ.
Any questions? Any clarifications? Right. Okay. So any issues when it comes to operations, just let me know. Send an email on that, and I will help you. What is important is now start working on your assessment. It's very important. Start working on your presentation, right? Based on set part A and to do all these things, the operation strategy and all sort of things has to come in part A. So this is the final bit that has to get included, the operation strategy, where your organization is in terms of driving your business strategy. So you need to come up and say, okay, to drive my business strategy, we want to be, the number one in this industry. For that, we have opened our doors to technology. So you need to basically explain a little bit on that. You need to explain what do you, how does your organization tend to do that? Getting the best technology. What sort of technology are you looking at? Is it ERP system? Is it, anything, something else? Is it AI models? You want to make your own manufacturing processes, highly automated. Is that the way forward? So these are some of the things that, you need to present as your operation strategy. Right? Okay, so activities of operations management are these. You can basically look at some of the things, understand your strategy, understand, see, if you are expand your operations to another country, then it makes sense to run your organization from a central location using technology. Because the moment you fragment your operations, what will basically happen is, you may need another business model to manage that. So what are the things that you can centralize? What are the things that you can decentralize? So these are things that you need to, really think about. And that will come as a result of your pestle and, SWOT analysis that you do of the selected country. So designing the products and services, we have already done that. Planning and controlling, improving the operations performance. We have already touched on that, the operations performance objectives and so forth. But keep in mind about the effects of globalization, environmental protection, social responsibility, technology awareness, knowledge management, the required. Now, if you are actually moving to a country where the type of knowledge workers that you will get is at very, very low level, then you will have a problem. So then you may have to send knowledge workers from Sri Lanka to this particular country to manage your operations. So that has to be identified. Broad responsibilities. Okay. Right. So these are the operation strategy. Role, objectives, and activities are dependent on a top-down approach, operations resources approach, bottom-up approach, and a market requirements approach. Now, the top-down approach is very simple. It is based on what the board of directors say, the vision and mission of the organization. What the business wants operations to do. Then the bottom-up perspective is based on how the operations perform, that can actually change the operation strategy. For example, your business strategy says, we want to move into a fully fledged ERP system that will integrate all functions in my organizations. Now, the bottom-up perspective of this decision will say, look, but we don't have the people who will support this initiative. We don't have the people that will help drive this. We don't have the capabilities. So what do? Then before you do all these things, you have to actually have a good training and development session. We need to develop the employees to manage the integration of the ERP system across all functions. So that is a bottom-up market requirement. So what is the market, forces us to do? If you are into online business, then obviously you need state-of-the-art, applications that has been used, right, to compete with other online businesses there in the market, linked to things like tracking mechanisms and so forth. So the market would basically tell you what sort of operations that you need to focus on. Then, of course, looking at your resources, right? So operations resources would be, you purchase an ERP system, fine, that's a resource now. Now, looking at your market requirements and your top-down approach, you may be using only a bit of the functionality that the ERP system is capable of. Now, from the operation resource perspective, you question, why are we only using this? Why can't we use this additional, functionality which is there in your ERP system? These are all examples, right? So these are some of the things that you need to basically look at, right? When you do an analysis of your organization's operation strategy. Right, so top-down approach is this, that it's very easy: corporate strategy, business strategy, operation strategy, and then, you operationalize that. Right, so this is the strategy hierarchy. Corporate strategy, what do you do? Business strategy, what do you do? Functional strategy, what do you do? So, corporate strategy, the question that should be asked is, what business to be in? What to acquire, what to divest, how to allocate cash. So this is actually right at the board level, corporate strategy. Now you look at your business strategy or your operation strategy for that matter. What is the mission? What are the strategic objectives of the firm? How to compete? Then your operational strategy or functional strategy. How to contribute to the strategic objectives, how to manage. So these are some of the examples that are there. Influences on decision making, you can actually go through this. These are all examples. You may have your own examples when you start doing your the analysis of your own organization. Okay. So I don't have to go through this. I have actually taken each and every one, through this, the product and service life cycle, right? Which needs to be, presented in your presentation. Are there any questions on this that you're not clear, that you need to clarify? The product and service life cycle and how it should be used in your assessment. Anyone?
JJ, on the assignment,
Yes.
when it comes to operation that we're trying to outsource, can it be a front-end operation or a back-end operation? Both are fine.
And so that's okay. Have you filled that form, organization? This
Yes.
you have not had a discussion with me, no?
I did, but didn't discuss exactly what operation we are going to put out.
But did I give you? Did we have a discussion on your selection, your organization?
Yes.
What is your organization?
MAS.
MAS. So what is your question again? What is the question again?
Can we outsource the part of the front-end operation instead of the back-end operation?
Yeah, so you need to basically justify that. When you say outsource, you are basically saying you move the front-end operation to the selected country. Is
Okay.
that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I wanted to hear.
Right. Okay. So that's okay.
Right.
No problem. Okay.
Right.
Right. So we just went through these order winning factors, qualifying factors. I've taken everyone through this. Are there any guys who are not clear about what order winning factors are and all qualifying factors are? Okay. So remember the 4V analysis that needs to be part of the operation strategy in your assessment. So this is very important. You have to understand the implications of running at low volume, implications of running at high volume, right? So these have to be sort of understood by the person who sort of uses this 4V analysis on your organizations, products, and services, right? So this is an example. Any questions on this? So what is wrong with this? This is wrong, actually. Can anyone tell me why this is wrong? This or not wrong, but then this is highly improbable. This particular line. Why? Can anyone tell me? Why is this line that I have drawn highly improbable?
When the volume is high, the variety can't be high.
Hello? Can you see this screen? Absolutely. Spot on. See, generally, if your volume is high, it is almost impossible to have the variety also as high as the volume. Probably the variety can be high, but it can't be as high as the volume. Generally, if your volume is high, your variety is basically low. So remember, so keep that in mind. If you put this one in, you have to justify why you're basically saying this. Okay. Right. So we did the performance objectives. This also is part of your operation strategy. So you need to basically say, where your organization's product and services, what your organization's product and services focus on: quality, cost, speed, dependability, flexibility. Now in this presentation, there's an example given here. You're looking at all these: volume, variety, variation, visibility, quality, dependability, retail suit and tailor suits. You know what a retail suit is? What is a retail suit? What is a retail suit? Retail suit is you go to a supermarket or a department store and then purchase a ready-made shirt or trouser. That's a retail suit, right? A tailored suit is what you do for your wedding and all. You go to Hercules Tailors or some place and then get it stitched. Now this is how you generally compare. Retail suits, generally volume is high because it comes in bulk. It's little or very few customization for retail suits. Probably the color may be different, that's about all, but the style will be the same. But for a tailored suits, right? It will always be volume. It's highly customized. Okay. Likewise, variety for retail suits is medium. Tailored suits is high. Variation demand is, medium. Okay, for a retail suit, you don't need visibility. But your tailored suit, you need a high visibility. Why? You're paying a premium. You go to this tailor and then give your measurement. And then, you invest in a high-priced fabric. And therefore, you need to know where your suit is. So you keep on giving them calls to find out, when they can actually finish this and deliver. So that's why the visibility is important. Quality for the retail suits generally standardized, but for the tailored suits, you need a high quality. Your specifications, your requirements are of a high standard. When you go to retail suits, you want fast service. You want that to be available in the store. But for a tailored suits, you don't need speed. You can actually give him at least about 1 week, 2 weeks, because you are prepared to wait because of the expected quality of that product. Dependability, yes, depends on store, but your tailored suits are very high dependability. Retail suits, you are not bothered too much about flexibility, but your tailored suit, your flexibility should be high. You want, things change even at the last moment. Costs generally, tailored suits are high. So this is some example of how you use the volume, variety, variation, visibility, and the 5 performance objectives to compare and contrast the factors of the products and services that makes them candidates for these. So when you do your 4V analysis and your performance objectives analysis on the product and service portfolio of the selected organization, you need to do something like this, right? You need to understand. Then you're talking about the order winning factors, qualifying factors, and performance objectives, right? Okay, so we have already gone through this, right, on one-on-one sessions. Fine. Now, when you select your organization, you need to look at supplies as well. Remember, now a lot of organizations tend to outsource their non-core activities. So you need to focus on that a little bit when you do your analysis of the organization. What are the functions in the proposed operation that you have decided to outsource? Okay. So you need to take a look at that. So this will basically change from organization to organization. Of course, these are some of the things that you can actually, take as examples. How do you select your suppliers? And are you looking at single sourcing or multi-sourcing? Do you have a single supplier for a particular resource that you want to purchase for your operation, or do we have multiple suppliers? That's the difference between single sourcing and multi-sourcing. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? You can actually read through this. Okay, and then because of the fact that you are moving to an overseas location, you may have to consider global sourcing. Sourcing outside business home country, right? So you may have to think of transportation costs. You may have to think of inventory carrying costs, cross-border taxes, supply performance, delays, misunderstandings, right? So if this is relevant to you, right? If you are actually moving your manufacturing operations from Sri Lanka to a specified country, then obviously, this slide would be handy for you to sort of, understand the impact of sourcing raw materials from a global sourcing point. Right, any questions? Any clarifications, any questions? Right, now, so can you start working on your assessment? Can you start drawing your activity flow diagram of your organization and send it across to me? Because you get a lot of marks for the activity flow diagram. Believe me, if you get it wrong, there's a lot of people who have failed because the activity flow diagram was not right. So keep that in mind. So if you can draw the activity flow diagram and email that to me, probably, I can take a look at it and then give my comments. Any clarifications? Okay, looks as if a lot of people are drowsing. Probably after a heavy lunch or something like that. Anyway, right. Okay, so I'll leave this with you and try or start doing your assessment now itself, because you have a lot of free time on your hands now these days. So you might as well do it and then send it across to me so that I can, especially the activity flow diagram, so that I can actually take a look at it and give you my feedback on that. Okay. Right. Okay, so that's all. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Yes,
Thank you, Jay. Thanks a lot.
bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, JJ. Thanks.
Thank you.